Welcome everyone. For those of you who've already joined, if you don't mind typing your name in the chat box or your student's name in the chat box, I would appreciate that very much. And I'm going to give it one more minute and we'll get started. I want to respect your time. Okay, I'm going to get started. Welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us this afternoon. This is usually one of my favorite times of the year where I actually get to put faces with names and meet and greet my parents. Unfortunately, due to COVID, we have to do everything via the internet, and not my absolute favorite way, but I mean, I guess we have to communicate some kind of way. But thank you so very much for joining tonight. Tonight we have Miss Ann Carmichael. She is from the Louisiana Education Loan Authority, also known as LELA. And she's going to talk to us tonight about completing the financial aid form and also maybe dispelling some myths about financial aid and just going over some information that needs to be done and completed on the financial aid application. Also, if you have any questions that you may need answered. And at the end, she's going to provide us with the number where you can get one-on-one help. And I'll also share with you a couple of dates that we're going to be having coming up at 35 where you can get one-on-one help. So without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Ann Carmichael.
Very good. Thank you so much for having me. I have worked with McDonogh 35 for years, and it's always a pleasure. I'm going to go ahead and get my presentation pulled up, and then I'll get started. Now, as we move through the presentation, I know it's a lot of information to take in one sitting. I'm going to go over the most commonly asked questions about the FAFSA. But if there's something that triggers a question and you want to get the answer in tonight's session, please use your Zoom chat box. And at the end, we will go over those questions and hopefully be able to provide you with the answers. So without further ado, I know that your counselor has told you that the Louisiana Department of Education has asked that the class of 2021 submit the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA, as a requirement for graduation. Now, this simply ensures that your money is ready and waiting for you when you begin college this fall. And because college can be expensive, it's time to start thinking about ways to pay for your education. Some of those expenses are going to include your equipment, books and supplies like textbooks, notebooks, a computer if you need one to complete your studies, personal expenses like your phone bill, fuel for your car or transportation back and forth to your campus. Also, any food purchases outside of your meal plan. Room and board, which could include your dorm room or your apartment if you're staying off campus. And then tuition and fees Now, fees are going to include parking, library, technology, athletic fees. And when you're doing your research on your colleges, most often the websites will show just their tuition. So you need to keep in mind that there are other fees and expenses that need to be considered. But the good news is that financial aid is available from the U.S. Department of Education, our state government, your college or career school, and nonprofit and private organizations. Every year, the federal government provides more than $120 billion in student financial aid, and we just want to make sure that you all have your portion. Types of student aid include the federal Pell Grant, the federal Supplemental Education Opportunity Grant, the Teacher Educational Assistance for College and Higher Education Grant, the Iraq and Afghanistan Service Grant, Federal Work Study, and direct subsidized, unsubsidized, and plus loans. Now, federal student aid grants are a form of financial aid that does not have to be repaid. So when you receive your financial aid offer from your colleges, you always want to accept all of the grant money. The Pell Grants are for undergraduates with financial need. FSEOGs are for undergraduates with exceptional financial need. And then the service grants are for students of military parents who died defending the country following 9/11. There's also a Teach Grant for students pursuing a teaching career. The Federal Work Study Program provides part-time jobs to help you pay for your college expenses. So these could be jobs in the athletic department, in the library, in the college that you're the field of study. And when you tell the financial aid office that you're interested in federal work study, they're going to begin identifying and offering students positions. This doesn't mean that you're obligated to accept the positions, but you will be offered them. Now, this is a FAFSA question, so we always encourage students to select yes, I'm interested in federal work study, even if you don't end up accepting one of the jobs. The earnings from these jobs are paid directly to the student and should be used to help pay his miscellaneous college expenses. Now, to talk briefly about federal student loans, there's the direct subsidized loan, and this is based on financial need. So no interest is charged on this type of loan until you graduate. Whereas the unsubsidized loans are available for all students, but interest is going to be accruing on this loan while you're in school. So you can see that there's a big difference between direct subsidized and unsubsidized loans. You always want to accept the subsidized portion first. And you can remind yourself once you receive your financial aid offers that the U in unsubsidized means that you always pay the interest on these loans. When you're offered student loans, if you need them to complete your academic year, always accept the federal student loan portion first, because payments aren't due until you graduate or cease to attend. The interest rate is fixed at a lower rate and no credit check is required. These loans are in the student's name, and the student is going to be building his credit if he does accept a federal student loan. Whereas the private loans should only be accepted on an as-needed basis, because most of these are going to require that payments be made while you're still in school, which can be kind of tricky. The interest rate might be variable and it's often much higher, and they almost always require a cosigner, which means that you're going to have to ask a parent or another adult to become part of that loan. And if you can't repay it, they'll be responsible for repaying it. So make sure you understand when you accept loans, your responsibilities. So to dispel the myth, almost everyone is eligible for some type of federal student aid. Now, all federal student aid and most institutional and private aid is contingent upon completion of the free application for federal student aid, or the FAFSA. Now, it launched on October 1st, and it does so every year, which, now that I'm mentioning that, you must submit a FAFSA every year that you're in college, because you're going to be awarded financial aid on a one academic year period at a time. Student financial aid is awarded on a first come, first served basis, so you want to get your FAFSA submitted as soon as possible, because we've already heard that more than 1 million FAFSAs have been submitted for next academic year. So get to the head of the line while the money is still available, so you'll be offered the maximum award that you're eligible to receive. Now, there will be deadlines for FAFSA completion. Your colleges will have FAFSA deadlines and priority financial aid deadlines. The TOPS scholarship requires a FAFSA submission deadline. Federal student aid has a deadline, and your school district may have a deadline as well. So check with your counselor on that. You want to begin the FAFSA process by collecting all of the documents needed to complete the form. And these include the student and his parents' Social Security cards, the student and parents' 2019 federal income tax returns, your W-2s, because there's information on this form that might not be printed on your tax return, and then bank statements and records of investments, because you must report your balances as of the date you submit your FAFSA. Now, you're going to begin the process by creating your Federal Student Aid ID, or the FSA ID, because this is going to allow the student and his parents to identify themselves electronically when submitting the FAFSA. The FSA ID will consist of a username and a password that each of you will create, and it should reflect only your personal information. Now, each student and one of his parents should create an ID at fsaid.ed.gov. Remember to use only your personal email address and phone number. Don't use your school email address, because once you graduate, federal student aid may have no way to get in touch with you. So if you don't already have a personal email address, now is the time to create one. Don't share information. Don't use mom or dad's mobile phone number, say, in your FSA ID, because that might cause trouble later signing your FAFSA. If you don't have an alternate phone number, then leave that field blank. Now, your FSA ID is legally binding. It's your official electronic signature, so make sure you're recording it. You're going to need it every year that you submit a FAFSA, and keep it in a very safe place. If you don't have access to a computer when you're ready to start your FAFSA, you can download the FAFSA mobile app. It's called My Student Aid, and you can use it to submit your FAFSA on your mobile device or on your mobile phone, as long as you have internet access. Or you can complete the FAFSA using the web-based version at fafsa.gov. You'll want to begin the FAFSA by logging in with the student's FSA ID, because the FAFSA is the student's application for federal student aid. Now, the parent's FSA ID will come in later if the parent chooses to transfer their tax info from the IRS into the FAFSA, and then again to sign the student's FAFSA. The high school class of 2021 should complete the 2021-2022 FAFSA, because that's the academic year that you're applying for aid. And when you get to this page, you're going to see there's another option to start the 2020-2021 FAFSA. But that FAFSA is for college students, those who are attending college during this academic year. Once you're in, you're going to see that there are 8 sections that need to be completed before submitting the FAFSA. The student demographics, where the student will report his social security number, name, date of birth, email address, home address, residency status, and gender. The school selection section, where the student will name his high school, any colleges that he wants his FAFSA data to be sent to, and his housing plans on each of those campuses. Then the dependency status section, where the student will be asked to consider a list of 10 questions that will determine whether he's dependent or independent in the eyes of federal student aid. And we'll go over that a little bit more in detail in a few minutes. You'll be asked to provide the number of dependents in your household and your parents' education. Now, oftentimes parents want to know why they're being asked their level of education, and that's an important question. It's important to know that there could be additional grant money or free money for first generation college students. So mom and dad, please fill out that question accurately. Now the parent demographics is the next section where parents will be asked to provide their social security numbers, their marital status, and their email addresses. You're moving next onto the student and parent financials, where you'll each report your working wages from 2019, list any federal benefits that you receive, and report the balances of your savings and investment accounts. Then it's time to sign and submit the FAFSA. Once you do, you're going to receive confirmation. Now, as you move through the FAFSA, if you have a question about a question, look over to the right-hand side. There's a question mark. You can always click on that question mark to provide more detail. There are hyperlinks within the form. If you're not sure one of the terms that they're using means, you can request a FAFSA online chat, call Federal Student Aid, or Leela's FAFSA helpline. But for this session, I'm only going to cover the most commonly asked FAFSA questions. But remember, if you have one and something jogs your memory, just go ahead and drop that information into the chat box. The citizenship requirement. Now, students must be citizens or eligible non-citizens to complete a FAFSA. If you're not sure what an eligible non-citizen is, this is one of the hyperlinks, and you can click on it to get a detailed description. If a student is a citizen or an eligible non-citizen, but his parents are not, that's fine. Just simply enter zeros anywhere a parent's social security number is asked for. Now, young men between the ages of 18 and 26 must be registered with Selective Service to receive federal student aid. So if you have not already registered with Selective Service, or if you haven't turned 18 yet, you can register within the FAFSA, and on the day that you turn 18, you will be automatically registered. Now, only the colleges that you list on the FAFSA in that school selection section are going to consider you for student financial aid. They're not just going to send your personal and financial information out there to every college across the country. You have to give them permission. So add all of the schools that you're considering. Even if you haven't finished your admissions application, go ahead and add them on your FAFSA. Once you do finish your application, they'll match up your financial aid forms and begin to process your student aid. If you plan to apply to more than 10 colleges, there are instructions here in this section to help you through that. Now, to determine your dependency status, you'll be asked to consider these 10 questions. Now, the purpose of this is to determine whether a student must report his parents' information or he can complete the form without mom and dad's info. Now, remember that these questions are being asked of the student, and I'm going to quickly go through each of them. Will you be 24 or older by January 1st of the year for which you're applying for financial aid? Are you married or separated but not divorced? Will you be working on a graduate degree? Do you have children who receive more than half of their support from you? Do you have dependents other than children or a spouse who live with you and receive more than half of their support from you? Are you currently serving on active duty in the U.S. Armed Forces for purposes other than training? Are you a veteran of the U.S. Armed Forces? At any time since you turned 13, were both of your parents deceased, or were you in foster care or a ward or dependent of the court? Are you an emancipated minor, or are you in legal guardianship as determined by a court? Are you an unaccompanied youth who's homeless, or are you self-supporting and at risk of being homeless? Now, if you can answer yes to just one of these questions and provide a legal document supporting your claim, then you're considered an independent student for FAFSA purposes, and you will not be required to provide parental information. But for FAFSA purposes, you're not considered independent simply because you file your own taxes or you live alone and support yourself. And I'll answer a couple of questions about this a little later in the presentation. And the number one question that we're asked is, which parents do I report on my FAFSA? But the rule of thumb is that the parent or parents that you've lived with the longest in the past 12 months should be listed on your FAFSA. So if you live with both of your biological parents, then that's easy. You'll just list both of them on your FAFSA. But if the parent that you lived with the longest in the past 12 months is either separated, divorced, or was never married, then you should list that parent only on the FAFSA. However, if that parent is now remarried, you must report his or her spouse as one of your parents on the FAFSA. In other words, federal student aid wants to know the financial standing of the household that the student has lived in the longest in the 12 months prior to the date that the FAFSA was submitted. Now, if you're identified as a dependent student, but your parents refuse to provide their information on your FAFSA, you can submit it by stating, I'm unable to provide information about my parents. However, you are only going to be offered federal student loans. So if you're considered a dependent student, you couldn't answer one of those yes to one of the 10 questions, and you submit your FAFSA without parental information, you will not be eligible for grant money. However, if you contact the financial aid office individually and talk to them, let them know your circumstances, they might be able to offer you additional support without your parents' information. So make sure you're not being shy about it. If you're in a situation, feel free to contact them. To make the student financial aid process go a lot smoother, please use the Internal Revenue Service's data retrieval tool if you filed your tax return in 2019. This ensures that your information is accurate and reduces the student's chances of being selected for verification. Once you are in the Internal Revenue site, you'll see this page pop up. This is where you want to grab your 2019 income tax return and use the information exactly as it's printed on that return. So most students and parents who are having trouble linking to the IRS, may not have access to their return. We see students who come in with tax returns and perhaps their name was misspelled. You've got to misspell it here on the IRS site. Or the street address is wrong. Perhaps your tax preparer printed avenue instead of street. The IRS wants to make sure that the person who's in possession of that tax return is entering information exactly as it's printed on this page. If you have trouble linking, please contact Federal Student Aid or call Leela's FAFSA helpline and we'll help you through this. And then you're almost finished with your FAFSA. But before you submit it, it's important to review the student aid report. This report just shows all of the questions you were asked on your FAFSA and your answers to them. A review of this report is just going to ensure that the financial aid office receives accurate information so that they can quickly process your aid. Now you're in the sign and submit section. You'll see that the student must provide an electronic signature or the FSA ID, and one parent, the one that created their ID, will sign here as well. Once you submit, you're going to see this screen pop up. Now I'm going to encourage you to print the page or take a screenshot, because although the student is going to receive a confirmation email letting him know that he did successfully submit the FAFSA, this is the only time you're going to see this much detail. You'll find out the next steps you need to take to finish the process. You'll see the date and time that you submitted your FAFSA. You'll see the list of colleges that are going to receive your data. So in the future, maybe you want to add a college. You will be able to review your estimated expected family contribution and consider your financial aid estimates. And I'm going to stress the word estimate because everybody gets excited when they see the dollar amounts. But please remember that federal student aid does not award your student financial aid. This information is just a suggestion that's sent on to your college financial aid offices, and they will be the ones that award your student financial aid. Now, once your FAFSA is fully processed, once your FAFSA is submitted, let's say that you want to add a school or something else has come up and there's an error on your FAFSA. You will receive an email from Federal Student Aid letting you know that you need to log back into your FAFSA and perhaps make some corrections. Maybe there was one signature missing. They're always going to let you know that there are more details that need to be taken care of. Now, what if you have submitted your FAFSA, but you want to make a correction? Maybe you want to add that school. Maybe the financial aid office has asked you to make a change on your FAFSA. You can do so in a variety of ways. You can mail your corrections in. You can ask your school's financial aid office to make those corrections for you. But the easiest way is to go back to FAFSA.gov, log in with the student's FSA ID, make those corrections, add that school, but always remember that you must sign and submit each time. Now, once your FAFSA is fully processed, it's going to be shared with the colleges you gave them permission to share it with. At that time, they will begin to identify any aid that you might be eligible to receive. Now, we're going to see a lot of this year with the situation all over the country with COVID, but especially in Louisiana because we've had so many hurricanes and tropical storms coming through our areas. If your family's financial situation has changed since you filed that 2019 return, contact the financial aid office because they have the ability to adjust your aid by using their own professional judgment. Say one or both parents have lost jobs. Maybe you've lost your job. Perhaps there have been some unexpected medical expenses that your family has incurred. Contact them. They're not going to automatically contact every student in Louisiana or every person that's applied to their school and say, hey, do you need some additional money? That's your responsibility to do so. So don't pass up that additional assistance. Now, once they do receive your information, they're going to start determining your net price. And they will do that by taking the cost of attendance at their college, subtracting any monies they have available to offer you, and, and then calculating the net price, which is the price that is your responsibility. This is the difference of your free monies and your and student loans offered. And this is the money that this is the dollar amount that you are going to be expected to pay. Now, each college is going to send a financial aid offer to you. It's going to list the cost of attendance there, any grants, your TOPS scholarship, any other institutional scholarships they might have for you, your work study, and any student loans that they can offer you so that you can determine your best option. You want to read over your offers carefully. You want to respond back to the financial aid office with any requests they might have so that they can quickly process your financial aid. So remember, be on the lookout for a financial aid offer. Sometimes colleges will wait until you finish your admissions applications before they will send a financial aid offer. So make sure you're getting that done as soon as possible as well. Once you do decide what college you're going to, you'll want to accept the aid in this order. Scholarships and grants, because this is gift aid and you don't have to repay it. Federal work study is earned money. You've already earned it. You don't have to pay that back. And then last are your student loans, because this is borrowed money that must be repaid and with interest. Now, the student financial aid process is explained in detail in Leela's FAFSA completion guide for the class of 2021, and it's free for all Louisiana high school seniors. So if you haven't already received yours, you can ask your counselor for a copy, or you can email me and I'll leave my contact information for you. I'll also include Leela's senior checklist to help you stay on track this year and be ready for college in the fall. I want to just go over 1 minute what scholarships are. I know that your counselor has talked to you about these and has told you about quite a few. They're everywhere. They're offered by the colleges you're applying to. They could be available from your parents' employers, from nonprofits and community and religious groups. Some scholarships are based on academic achievement and some are based on financial need. They could cover the entire cost of your tuition, or they could just be a one-time award. But either way, they're worth applying for because they will reduce the cost of your education, therefore reducing your student loan debt. So talk to your counselor about this. Ask your financial aid counselor about this and talk to your admissions recruiters. They see a lot of scholarships coming across their desks, so they will have some good ideas. This year, Leela is offering a $1,000 FAFSA completion scholarship for all Louisiana high school students who apply, who have completed their FAFSA. So everybody is eligible to apply for this scholarship. And then once you're in college, you can apply for our $1,000 Choose Louisiana scholarship. That is, if you're going to a Louisiana college, because we want to keep you here. You can find out all the details at leela.org. Now, for students who are going to a pricier college and need additional financial aid once they've exhausted all their scholarships, grants, federal and state monies, We do administer a nonprofit education loan program, and you can find out more about that at realchoice.org. Now is the time to drop your questions in that chat box. And I want to make sure that you have our FAFSA helpline number here and my email address. I'm always available to help you go through your FAFSA. If you have a question you want to quickly call me about, I'll be happy to answer that. Or if you want me to stay on the line with you while you complete your FAFSA, I'm here for you as well. Now, before we go to the questions in the chat box, I do want to let you know that a copy of this presentation is going to be posted on our YouTube channel, and it's called Ask Leela. If you want to go over it again, or if you want to share it with somebody who couldn't attend tonight, that'll be great. So I'm going to turn this back over, and we'll begin to answer some of your questions.
Does anybody have any questions they would like to ask? There's none in the chat box at this time, but it's not very many of us on. But if you do have something, Ms. Carmichael is available and you are free to unmute yourself and ask the question.
Here's one. Where can the application be found? Now, Delvin, is this the application for FAFSA or for the $1,000 FAFSA completion scholarship? I'm going to type in the chat box the application address, the website for the FAFSA.
And parents also listed in the child's Google Classroom. I have posted the very same thing that Ms. Carmichael posted, the FAFSA.gov website, where all you literally need to do is click. It'll bring you there automatically. You can ask your children whether if they can log you onto the Google Classroom, and it'll bring you directly to it. The FSA ID that you need for signing and completing the financial aid application itself, and the financial aid application. And if that doesn't work, I'm going to put my information also in the chat box. You can also give me a call and I can direct you as well. Ms. Carmichael, we have another one. I've already completed my son's FAFSA, but I'm looking for more resources, and I need to still find, resources, and do I need to still fill out an application?
Well, if you've completed the FAFSA, then you have completed the application for any federal student aid that your child might be eligible for. But I would definitely be looking for more scholarship applications.
Also, again, parents, I have posted over 400 scholarship offers and applications in that Google Classroom from the students. The students have all of the resources they could possibly want on that Google Classroom. I'm going to try to find a way to share them with you. It's very hard with you guys not being connected directly to McDonogh 35 and being able to access the Google Classroom. But there is on the McDonogh 35 website a link to a parent page, and you should be able to find that same information on the parent page. Don't quote me. I need to find that out. Once I find it out, I'll definitely let you know. So for my parent who asked that question, can you just send your name over to me so that I can make sure I respond to that appropriately?
And I know the senior year is a busy, busy time, but I really encourage you to encourage your students, even if it's take an hour on a Sunday afternoon just to complete one scholarship application. I have two daughters and they did not want to be bothered with scholarships, and now they have student loan debt. So usually the senior year is the prime time to apply for scholarships. Most of them are only offered to graduating high school seniors. Now, they contacted me once they were in college and they saw they were having to borrow money and they wanted to know if mama knew a way they could find some scholarships, but they are limited once you do get in college. So make sure you're encouraging them to apply this year.
Are there any other questions? I thank you guys so very much for attending. I know a lot of you have already filled out the financial aid application, and I just appreciate you joining us again so that you can get more information. And I hope that this has answered any questions that some of you may have had and had not had an opportunity to address with me. But in the event that you need to speak with me or Ms. Carmichael's information is here posted, and I've also put my email address and phone number in the chat box. Feel free to reach out to me, and I don't normally stop answering the phone until like 9 o'clock. So don't hesitate to pick the phone up and call me. I promise you I'll answer.
And I see one last question. Someone asking to meet with you at the school, so I don't want to stop this presentation until you get that contact information.
So here's the issue with the school setting. It's very hard to have the parents in the school building to do the financial aid application. I'll have to get a clearance from Mr. Green in order to do so. If you send me your name, because it's just showing iPhone, if you send me your name as well, I can get back with you and let you know whether or not or when it'll be appropriate for you to come into the building. I have to get that approved through the school though. All right. So if there are no other questions, Ms. Carmichael, is there anything else?
No, but I really want to tell you that you've had some very good questions here, and this has been a great conversation to have with you. So good luck to everybody. Have a great senior year. You have plenty of support, and I hope to hear from a lot of you soon. And I want to see those FAFSA completion scholarship applications come in. So have a nice evening.
Thank you so much, Ms. Carmichael, and thank you, Pam.